Good evening everyone. Good evening everyone. Welcome to Tathastu. So as part of Prelims Aadharshila, I am taking a series Dandi to Azadi. So today, as we discussed in the last class, about the difference of opinion between Gandhiji and Subhash Chandra Bose, and before that we had discussed about the resignation of the Congress ministries. Today we will be seeing the further development of it, like Congress ministries we had seen, and we have seen that Congress ministries resigned. When they resigned? In October, November 1939. So this was something which we had seen in one lectures before. Then why they resigned? Because World War II broke out in September 1939 and Congress was not invited, Congress was not consulted, rather, before declaring India to be part of the war efforts. If we see the World War II, there were two sides. One were the Allies or the Allied powers, and the other were the Axis powers. In Axis power there were Germany, Italy and Japan, prominent powers among Axis, and in Allied if we see, British were there, French were there, France was there, later on United States also joined them and Soviet Union also joined them. So these were the Allied, the Axis powers. So when World War II broke out, Britain said that India is also part of the World War II and it will fight against the Axis powers. So basically India will fight from the side of Allied powers. That's why Congress resigned. Why Congress resigned? Congress ministries resigned because they felt that Indian opinion was not taken into account. Indian opinion was not taken into account. Good evening everyone. Good evening Guddu. Good evening Ashish. Good evening Parmila. Good evening Priya. All of you very warm good evening. So moving on to the next thing. Once Congress resigned, then it started working for the next thing, and there were debate, discussions, various groups were formed. One group was led by Congress Old Guard. In last class we had discussed Gandhiji was there, Rajendra Prasad was there, Vallabhbhai Patel was there, so many leaders were there in one side. Then there were one group led by Subhash Chandra Bose and his Congress Socialists. Then there were Nehruji was there. So there were a number of groups. Within the Congress. We had covered all these things. Now we will go to March 1940. If we see, before learning about August offer and individual Satyagraha, let's understand a background of it, the chronological sequence of events. In that sense, this month, March 1940, is very important and very eventful for our exam also. Why? Because a number of things happened in March 1940. First thing was the Congress session. Where it happened? Ramgarh. Where it happened? Ramgarh. Where it is? It is near Ranchi in present Jharkhand. At that point of time, it was in Bihar. So, Congress session, who was the president? Maulana Azad was the president. He was the president at Ramgarh session. In Ramgarh session, Maulana Azad reiterated the Indian demand for complete independence. So, first thing was demand for complete independence. Second thing was no cooperation with the British. No cooperation with the British in terms of 3M. What was 3M? 3M was money, material, and manpower. So, no cooperation with the British in terms of 3M with respect to World War II. This was another thing which was reiterated with respect to World War II. Demand for complete independence, no cooperation of British in terms of 3M, that is money, material and manpower with respect to World War II. This was another thing which was reiterated in Ramgarh session. And third thing was that civil disobedience movement or next mass movement as soon as the organization is ready. Congress organization is ready. As the Congress organization becomes ready, next civil disobedience movement or mass movement will be launched. So these were few things which were reiterated in which session? In this Ramgarh session. But if we see the Ramgarh session, other than the Congress session, there was another thing which was happening in Ramgarh. As I told you that this March 1940 was very eventful. So on one hand, INC session, I told you these were number of points or resolutions which were made at Congress session. Then at the same time, parallelly, Subhash Chandra Bose also reached Ramgarh. Subhash Chandra Bose also reached Ramgarh, and he organized anti-compromise conference. Anti-compromise conference. Who were the parties involved here? Forward Bloc plus Kisan Sabha. So when the Congress session was happening at Ramgarh, parallelly Subhash Chandra Bose had organized a anti-compromise conference at same place, Ramgarh. Forward Bloc and Kisan Sabha were involved. Other leaders was Sahajanand Saraswati. Sahajanand Saraswati was also part of it. He was also involved in this. And as part of this anti-compromise conference, Subhash Chandra Bose clearly stated that Indians should not compromise with the British with relation to the war efforts. For a share in the government, we should not compromise with the British. We should not provide them men, material and money for their war efforts. So that's why this anti-compromise conference was held at Ramgarh. In addition to this, another thing that happened in March 1940 was at Lahore. You may have read about this Lahore resolution of Muslim League, All India Muslim League. So 3 events happening at 2 different places and all 3 very important. And in Lahore resolution of Muslim League, it was decided that Muslims, Indian Muslims have transformed from a minority to a nation. So basically this Lahore resolution signified the transformation of Indian Muslims from minority to a nation. Minority to a nation. So this was another important development which finally led to the partition of India, finally led to the formation of Pakistan. It formally proclaimed Muslims as a nation. So this Lahore resolution, it formally proclaimed Muslims as a nation. So these were some of the developments which happened in March 1940, and these developments were very important, very consequential, and they contributed a lot in the next few years. The journey of India's freedom struggle, which was going to happen in next few years, all these events contributed to that. If we see next is the August offer. Next is so against this background came the August offer. Why the name August offer? Because it came in August 1940. It came in August 1940. So first thing was this. It came in August 1940. That's why the name is August offer. But the question arises, the why August offer? Why the Viceroy Lord Linlithgow came with this offer? What was the reason? The first reason was, as I told you, World War II had broken out in Europe and there were 2 powers, Allied and Axis. And especially if we see Axis, Germany was very powerful at that point of time. So against the setbacks received due to strength of Germany, a number of nations in the Europe, which included Belgium, Holland, France, all these had almost fallen before the Hitler's army. In fact, Hitler has launched an aerial attack on Britain itself. So Britain was fighting for its survival in Europe. Why? Because Hitler had gained a lot of success. Hitler's army was on rampage. It was quite successful and 3 nations had already fallen before it. So Britain did not had a choice because it wanted India's support in its war efforts against Germany. So one background was the Hitler's success. Hitler's success and setback for Allied powers. So this was one thing. Second thing was the resolution adopted at Ramgarh session. Resolution adopted at Ramgarh session. Both these things built enough pressure on the British Raj to force them to come up with an offer which was called August offer. So it was not that there was any change of heart because of which they came up with this offer. There were reasons behind this because of which they came up with this offer, and so they adopted conciliatory attitude towards Indian National Congress. So this was the background because of which this offer came. We will see one by one the various proposals, what were the things which were offered in this August offer. So the first thing that Viceroy Lord Linlithgow gave in this offer was the provision of dominion status, but they did not tell the time that when they are going to give this. So dominion status in unspecified future. They will give in future, but they will not tell the time. So one was the dominion status. These things you will have to remember, because August offer is important for exam. It comes in exam also regularly. So one thing was dominion status in unspecified future. Second thing was post-war constitutional consultative body. So they proposed that after war they will have a post-war constitutional consultative body, which you can call Constituent Assembly, composed entirely of Indians. So this was another offer under August offer. First is dominion status, second is Constituent Assembly, third is War Advisory Council. This was the third proposal in this offer. Dominion status, Constituent Assembly, War Advisory Council. In addition to that, they had also proposed that Viceroy's Executive Council will be expanded. So expansion of Viceroy's Executive Council. This was another offer under this, and once Indian members are included in this, so it was proposed that there will be more Indian members than British members. So basically a majority of Indian members in Viceroy Executive Council. This was the fourth proposal under August offer. And the last thing was no future constitution to be adopted. No future constitution to be adopted without consent of minorities. No future constitution to be adopted without the consent of minorities. So basically this clause gave a veto to minorities in constitutional scheme of things. No constitutional provision can be adopted by the Constituent Assembly without the consent of minorities. So this was another. So these were the 5 things which you can easily remember: dominion status, Constituent Assembly, War Advisory Council, veto to the minorities, and expansion of Viceroy's Executive Council. So these were 5 things proposed under August offer. But this was completely neglected. But this was completely rejected by the Congress. So Congress rejected August offer. Why Congress rejected August offer? Why? First thing, if we see, Congress had long before, in its Lahore session itself in 1929, had declared its goal to be complete independence, Purna Swaraj. Now they are offering what? Dominion status. So Nehru said that the concept of dominion status is as dead as doornail. So basically they rejected. Why? Because this was an old concept which Congress was not ready to accept now. So Nehru said concept of dominion status was as dead as doornail. It means it was clearly as dead as doornail, means it was clearly and obviously dead. It cannot be talked about now. So first was this, that dominion status was not acceptable to the Congress. Second thing, Congress had been demanding a national government at present, not after the war, but there was no proposal to adopt anything at present. Everything was post-war. Everything was post-war. So Congress was not happy with that. They wanted something at present, something immediately, and Britain was not ready to share that power at present, as the war was going on. So that's why Congress was not happy. So one was the concept of dominion status. Second thing, objection was veto to minorities. This was in a way acceptance to the demand of Muslim League, to the pressure of Jinnah. So this was nothing but, Congress said this is nothing but appeasement of Muslim League. Appeasement of Muslim League. So that's why Congress rejected the August offer. In addition, as I told you, nothing proposed for immediate future. Everything was post-war. So this was another objection of the Congress. Everything you have proposed after the war, nothing now. So that's why Congress rejected the August offer. It was not accepted by the Congress. When Congress will reject August offer, what will happen? It will start preparing for the next round of struggle. And at the same time, the British also understood that if Congress is not accepting our offer, then it will go for some other extra constitutional steps, some movement, some mass movement, some civil disobedience movement. So as expected, the British government, British Raj, they enacted laws, ordinances to suppress the next round of mass movement or struggle. So they first came up with Defense of India Act 1939. Then they passed ordinances. They passed ordinances to suppress freedom of press. To suppress freedom of press. To suppress the right to organize. Right to organize of the people, and to suppress freedom of speech and expression of the people. So to suppress these things, To suppress these things, Defence of India Act was enacted and a number of ordinances were passed by the British government. And if they do this, what will happen? Congress will also come up with its own plan. So basically this effectively declared martial law in India, under which people can be easily arrested, easily detained. So this was something which was done by the British Raj. When British government imposed these things on India, Congress came up with its own plan of action. And that was individual Satyagraha. So first let us understand what is individual Satyagraha. What was its time? October. In October, as I told you, August offer came in August, and within 2 months in October 1940 started individual Satyagraha, which continued till, you can say, 1941 December. So this was the basic timeline. Now the question arises, what was individual Satyagraha? As the name suggests, it was a limited Satyagraha which was to be done on individual basis. That too by which individuals? Those individuals who will be carefully chosen by the Gandhiji, and at specific places, specific localities. So if we see, what was it? It was a limited Satyagraha. To be done at individual level. It was a limited Satyagraha to be done at the individual level, individual basis, in specific places, specific localities. So this was individual Satyagraha. Now the question arises, what was the purpose of individual Satyagraha? What was the purpose? And what were these individual Satyagrahis supposed to do as part of their struggle, as part of their Satyagraha? So if we see the purpose of individual Satyagraha, one purpose was to give expressions to people's strong feeling. One purpose was to give expression to people's strong feeling. So one was because people were getting impatient at this point of time, because World War II had started, because of which people were facing problem in India. At the same time, people were trying to participate or wanting to participate in another mass movement. In fact, the socialist people led by Subhash Chandra Bose and others, they were in favor of another mass struggle. So people were getting patient. In fact, many congressmen were also getting impatient. So to give expression to their emotions, one purpose was this. Second purpose was to give opportunity to British, to accept our demands peacefully, As I told you that initially the Congress leadership was sympathetic towards the British in World War II. They were very clear that when it comes to choosing between fascism and British imperialism was on right side. They were fighting for a just cause. Why? Because fascism was very dangerous ideology. So they did not want to disturb the British war efforts. That's why they wanted to give opportunity to the British to accept their demands peacefully. So this was the purpose of individual Satyagraha. In addition to that, another purpose was also to strengthen the Congress organization, to awaken and arouse the people for the next mass struggle which was going to happen in a year or two. So that was also another purpose, but these were two main purposes behind individual Satyagraha. If we see individual Satyagraha, what were Satyagrahis supposed to do? Demand of Satyagrahi. They were supposed to get themselves involved in anti-war speech. This anti-war speech will have two components. First is that India should not cooperate with the British in this war efforts. Why? Because British imperialism is also dangerous, as fascism and Nazism are dangerous. British imperialism is also dangerous. Second thing, India itself is not free. How can it fight for the freedom of Britain, France and other countries? So a country which is itself enslaved cannot be accepted to fight for others. So that's why one was the anti-war speech they were supposed to make. In addition to that, it was also to affirm their right to freedom of speech. It was also to affirm their right to freedom of speech. As I told you, Defense of India Act was enacted, number of ordinances were enacted to curb freedom of speech of the Indian people. So these Satyagrahis through their speeches were supposed to assert their right to freedom of speech also, that you cannot suppress our voices. Second thing, anti-war speech, and second thing, to reiterate that no cooperation with British in terms of 3M, as I told you, 3 M's with respect to World War II. They were supposed to reiterate this. 3M means money, materials and manpower. So these were some of the things the individual Satyagrahis were supposed to do. These were the demands made from the Satyagrahis. Once they do these things, they were in fact also supposed to do one thing, that was to inform their place and time of speech to concerned district magistrate, DMs. This was another thing which was part of the individual Satyagraha. This statement can itself come in prelims and you will feel yourself surprised that how can this be true? But this was a part of individual Satyagraha. That is, the Satyagrahis were supposed to inform their place and timing of speech to the concerned district magistrates. जो DM थे उनको बताना था कि हम कहां और किस समय पर ये अपना स्पीच देने जा रहे हैं. This was another thing as part of individual Satyagraha. Now coming to who will choose this Satyagrahi? Gandhi ji. Gandhi ji will choose this Satyagrahi. Who was the first Satyagrahi? Acharya Vinoba Bhave was the first individual Satyagrahi. Who was the second individual Satyagrahi? Jawaharlal Nehru. And who was the third individual Satyagrahi? Was Brahmadatta. So these were the first three Satyagrahis. Sometimes questions can come from this also. A statement can be framed from this also. So they were supposed to give, as I told you, anti-war speech. After giving a speech, generally they were arrested. But if they are not arrested, generally people used to gather around them and police used to arrest them. But suppose if they are not arrested after a speech, then they were supposed to move to villages to awaken and arouse people. And after that, they have to lead people towards Delhi. Lead people towards Delhi. So that's why called Delhi Chalo movement also. Delhi Chalo movement it was also called. Why? Because after a speech and arousing the people, they have to lead people towards Delhi. So this movement was also called Delhi Chalo movement. These were some of the things which were part of individual Satyagraha. Which were part of the individual Satyagraha. So if we see by 15th May 1941, as I told you, when individual Satyagraha started, it started in October 1940, and by 15th May 1941, more than 25,000 Satyagrahis were arrested. So basically, lot of people participated in this Satyagraha. It created a lot of enthusiasm in the people and contributed to the awakening, arousal of the people towards the freedom struggle. So by 15th of May, 25,000 Satyagrahis were arrested. However, later on, they were released. They were released also, and slowly by December 1941, this movement ended. This movement ended. So as I told you that how August offer came, why individual Satyagraha started, how these things contributed towards our freedom struggle, what were the important events which happened in March 1940. First was the Ramgarh session of the Congress, second was the Ramgarh conference of Forward Bloc, and third was the Lahore resolution passed by the Muslim League. Next thing was the August offer, and in response to that came the individual Satyagraha. So that's all today in this lecture. In next class, we'll discuss about the Cripps mission and the other things which will come associated with that. Thank you so much.